Hey everybody, it's time for our last chapter of Runaway Ralph. What is going to happen to Ralph today? And we have two special guests. Ralph and Chum are here. Chum the hamster and Ralph the mouse. Let's see what the last chapter is going to tell us about their adventure. It's called A Dangerous Plan, Chapter 9. I'm a failure, Ralph told himself as the bird chorus announced the dawn and a rooster crowed down by the barn. I'm a miserable, rotten failure. Ralph had returned to his perch in the bamboo after a night spent hurrying and scurrying and worrying. Every building at Happy Acres camp was built on unknowable, mouse-proof concrete. Every screen door was above a cliff-like concrete step. The watch still lay hidden in the bamboo leaves. Garth would still learn that his name was not to be cleared after all, and Ralph would not get his motorcycle back. Drat, he said to himself, drat, drat, drat. He felt especially bad because Garth actually had left a quarter of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at the foot of the bamboo for his supper the night before. Ralph was about to climb down the bamboo to hide from Garth when the alarm clock rang, and the bugler stumbled out to rouse the sleeping camp. Campers washed their faces at their wash basins outside the lodges, and then, before they went to breakfast, the girls carried their sleeping bags out to air. Some draped their unzipped bags on fences, and others, including Karen, spread theirs on the grass in the sun in the girls' area. Why, here's my chance after all, thought Ralph in wonder, as a plain, simple, but dangerous sprang into his mind. After noticing that Catso was sitting expectantly by the kitchen door waiting to be fed, Ralph leaped to the ground and found the watch under the bamboo leaves. Seizing it by the buckle on the leather strap, he began the labor of dragging the watch toward Karen's sleeping bag. The watch was heavier than Ralph had remembered. He pulled and strained and managed to tug it across the gritty path to the craft shop and into the shelter of the grass. The watch slid more easily through the grass, and Ralph soon learned to choose the smoothest way, avoiding clods of dirt and prickly weeds. The campers finished breakfast and came bursting out of the dining hall. Ralph toiled on, pulling the watch toward Karen's sleeping bag a fraction of an inch at a time, knowing that Garth must be searching for him by the bamboo. Ralph began a long, hard detour around a fallen walnut and hoped that sometimes Garth would at least know he had tried, even if he might not succeed. Suddenly, the fur along Ralph's spine began to prickle, and he froze in his tracks. Catso! The hunter's eyes of the cat had caught the movement of the grass. Ralph crouched motionless beside the watch. Catso slunk close to the ground, moving so quietly he seemed to flow through the grass. Only the tip of his tail twitched. Ralph knew that trying to run was useless. Running would only make the hunt more interesting for Catso and prolong the misery for Ralph. Catso stopped and waggled his hindquarters experimentally, as if he were trying to find the most efficient position for pouncing. Where was Lana? Ralph's life passed before his eyes. His family mouse nest back at the Mountain View Inn, his mother and Uncle Lester, and all of his brothers and sisters and cousins, the boy who had given him the motorcycle that had changed his life, the cage in the craft shop, Chum, and Garth. Catso crouched even lower and waggled his hindquarters once more in preparation for the pounce. Ralph's eyes were distracted from Catso by Sam, who trotted purposely across the grass. If one doesn't get me, the other one will, thought Ralph, as he tried to shrink even smaller beside the watch. Surely a dog would not want to crunch a watch between his teeth. Sam growled deep in his throat, distracted. Catso stopped waggling, and glared at Sam. Get me in trouble, will you? Growled Sam to the cat. Catso stood up, arched his back, and appeared to double in size. See here, Sam, as he hissed. I'm supposed to exterminate pesky mice. Well, not this one, growled Sam, advancing. He belongs here, and you got me in trouble by letting him escape. Is that so? Catso hissed back as he swiped at Sam's nose with an evil clawed paw. What about me? I'm unjustly accused of eating him. And what are you up to now? Demanded Sam. And with that question, he snapped at Catso, who turned his back and with his tail proudly erect stalked off toward the craft shop, before he suddenly remembered he had not washed lately. While Catso sat grooming his toes, Sam eyed Ralph with interest. You're a busy little fellow, he remarked, not unkindly. First a motorcycle, and now a wristwatch. He thought a moment before he said, Say, where did you get that watch? You didn't happen to steal it, did you? No, you couldn't. You're just too little. That's right, I am too little, agreed Ralph. But Catso stole it, and I'm trying to return it to its rightful owner. He told Sam the whole story, explaining why Garth could not return the watch. Sam glanced at Catso and growled, but Catso merely paused in washing his left hind foot to look disdainfully at Sam. who then said to Ralph, "You're pretty little to be pulling that watch across this rough ground. Maybe I can help you out. Here, let me take it for you." Ralph trembled to see that the great snout coming closer to him. He crept away from the watch and stared fascinated as Sam delicately picked up the leather strap in his teeth and trotted over to Karen's sleeping bag, where he dropped the watch on the flannel lining. Ralph crept closer. "Oh, thank you, Sam," he said, genuinely grateful to the big dog. "It was all in line of duty," said Sam. "Still, one thing bothers me. Boys don't come into the girls' area, but couldn't a boy throw a watch over here? A boy could stand on the other side of the fence and toss a watch into a sleeping bag. I'm not sure Garf's name will be cleared when Karen finds the watch." "I never thought of that," admitted Ralph, "but give me a little time and I can take care of it." He scurried over to the watch, began to gnaw a hole in the fabric of the sleeping bag. Garf might be able to throw a watch, but he couldn't gnaw a hole. Sam settled himself with his nose on his paws to guard Ralph. Ralph used his sharp teeth so efficiently that soon he had a hole in the dry and tasteless sleeping bag lining. He waded into the Dacron stuffing, dragged the watch in behind him. "You all right in there?" asked Sam. "Of course I'm all right," answered Ralph, showing the Dacron aside to make room for the watch. The Dacron was softer than most finely shredded Kleenex. It was softer than nylon stockings or feather pillows or any other soft thing Ralph had experienced at the inn. "Then I'd better be on my way," said Sam. "I still have the barn to inspect." Ralph popped his head out of the hole in the sleeping bag. "Thanks a lot, Sam," he said. "You saved my life." "I really mean it." The watch band still protruded from the hole, so Ralph crawled back inside and tugged some more until he was sure it was safely out of sight. There. When Karen climbed in her sleeping bag that night, she would be sure to feel a lump, investigate, and discover her missing watch in a place where Garf could not have hidden it. The Dacron was deliciously soft, and Ralph was tired after a sleepless night. "I've got to get out of here before rest time," he told himself, but part of him answered, "Go on, take a short nap, only a minute or two. The best time is a long way off, and you need some sleep." The Dacron was soft and so cozy. The sounds of the camp were muffled, and Ralph was so tired. The next thing Ralph knew, the sleeping bag was moving. He heard the swishing sound of a long zipper being closed and felt himself being lifted up. Then a screen door slammed. The sleeping bag was set down, and a pair of hands smoothed it out. "Drat," thought Ralph, "now I've done it." Oh my goodness. See him all curled up in the softness of the blanket, and he went to sleep. Oh my gosh, Ralph, what are you thinking? He heard the muffled sound of boots being thrown on the floor. The cot beneath him heaved, and a sudden weight seemed to flatten Ralph, even though he was cushioned by Dacron. Ralph could not help himself. He squeaked. The weight pressing on him was removed instantly. The springs bounced. 2 feet hit the floor, and Ralph heard Karen's muffled voice say, "That's funny. I'm sure I heard a squeak." "It's your spring, silly," said another girl. "No," said Karen, "it was more like a mouse, and it was right under me." "Quiet, girls. It's rest time," said the counselor. "I better get out of here," thought Ralph, crawling out of his Dacron nest and in between the 2 layers of flannel lining. As he started toward what he hoped was the opening end, he heard the swishing sound of the zipper. The top of the sleeping bag was thrown back, and Ralph was exposed for all to see. "Eek!" squeaked Karen. "It's a mouse, and he isn't even squashed." Ralph leaped to the floor and was aware of a double row of girls staring at him from their bunks. He darted toward an overturned riding boot, realized that he would be trapped inside, and darted the other way out without knowing where he was even going. Now all the girls were squealing, "Catch him! Don't let him go! Isn't he darling?" "He isn't darling in my sleeping bag," said Karen. Sock feet on the floor. "Get a wash basin," someone yelled. "Catch him under a wash basin." "Girls!" cried the counselor. Ralph darted this way and that. No matter which way he ran, he met feet. He was frantic. He knew he had to find a way to escape before someone clapped something over on top of him. The screen door creaked, so he knew someone had run outside for a basin. "A hat!" someone shouted. "Where's a hat?" In his panic, Ralph ran up and over a foot in a white sock. His owner screamed. Sam, alerted by the scream, began to bark. A straw cowboy hat plopped down on the concrete floor, making a dark dome over Ralph. The daylight that shone through the straws seemed like starlight to a mouse. "Look," shrieked Karen, "a hole in my sleeping bag. He chewed a big hole right in my sleeping bag." Sam, frantic to protect the girls, scrabbled his paws against the screen door. "It's only me," squeaked Ralph, but no one could hear him. Ralph was alert. waiting for someone to lift the hat so that he could make a dash. If not for a knothole, at least for a shelter or a bunk or anywhere to get out of there. There's something there's something in the hole of my sleeping bag, cried Karen. My watch! Look, it's my missing watch. Feet went padding to Karen's bunk. The screen door opened. One set of dog footsteps and two sets of human footsteps entered, those of the girl who had gone for the wash basin and those of someone else. Girls, what is going on in here? Asked Aunt Jill. This is supposed to be rest time. Ralph could hear Sam snuffling around in circles with his nose to the floor. The girls all tried to speak at once, but Karen managed to tell about the finding of the watch. So Garf couldn't have taken it, said another girl. And we have the mouse in person right here under that hat, said another. Sam's nose came to the halt at the hat brim. Hey, Sam, it's only me, squeaked Ralph in alarm. He was relieved to have Sam sit and begin to pant. Ralph pressed his eye to a crack in the straw hat and saw Sam's long pink tongue hanging out. But what I don't understand, said Karen, is how the watch got inside the hole. A mouse couldn't put it there. You'll never know, thought Ralph in a grim amusement. Aunt Jill, what should we do with this mouse? Ralph heard one of the girls ask. We're going to scoop him up in this wash basin. Not if I can help it, thought Ralph. Why don't we give him to Garf, suggested Aunt Jill. I'm sure he misses his mouse, and I know his feelings were hurt because some people thought he had taken the watch. Good idea, agreed Karen. Well, thought Ralph, that takes care of lots of things. When the brim of the hat was lifted and the rim of the plastic wash basin scraped against the floor, Ralph hopped into the basin and, with hat still held over him, felt himself being lifted up. Then the hat was raised a few inches on one side of the basin. Ralph saw a row of eyes staring at him. Ralph could not help trembling, even the thought for sure, but he had nothing to fear. He's so little, said one of the girls, marveling. Aunt Jilly looks a lot like Garf's mouse, said Karen. You don't suppose... One mouse looks pretty much like another one, said Aunt Jill briskly. Now, girls, back to your bunks. I'll take the mouse to Garf. Darkness fell on Ralph as she replaced the hat over the basin to hide him. Ralph felt himself being carried out of the girls' lodge and past the craft shop, where he could hear Chum gnawing at the bars of his cage. Poor old Chum. He heard the door of Garf's lodge being opened. Garf, he whispered. Aunt Jill, wake up, wake up. I have something for you. Huh, said Garf sleepily. Waking a sleeping boy in a hot summer afternoon is not easy. I have a mouse for you, said Aunt Jill. A mouse? Ralph could tell Garf was wide awake now. Let me see. Ralph sat quietly in the basin while the hat was cautiously lifted. He could see the other boys and their counselor sprawled in sleep on their bunks, and on a ledge over Garf's lower bunk he saw his crash helmet. Karen found him in a hole in her sleeping bag, Aunt Jill explained, and it was the strangest thing. She found her missing watch right inside the hole with him. Ralph saw that Aunt Jill was studying him thoughtfully. No kiddin', exclaimed Ralph, forgetting to keep his voice down. Yes, whispered Aunt Jill, and the boys thought you might like to have the mouse. I sure would, whispered Garf. I think we can bend the cage back into shape, said Aunt Jill. Can't I keep him here in the basin? Asked Garf. He might escape, said Aunt Jill, but he's your mouse. She smiled and slipped quietly out of the lodge. You did it, whispered Garf. Sure I did it, said Ralph, but do I have to sit here in this basin? Of course not, answered Garf, holding out his hand. Ralph leaped into Garf's palm, and Garf gently moved his hand down close to the pocket. And there, as he hoped, was his motorcycle. In the warm and cozy darkness, he ran his paws over the handlebars, the plastic seat, the wheels, the exhaust pipe. The motorcycle was intact, and it was his once more. He had earned it. Ralph popped out of the pocket. You aren't going to make me go back into that cage, are you? He asked. Not if you promise not to run away. I'm taking you back to the inn tomorrow, remember? You haven't forgotten your promise about the motorcycle, have you? Asked Ralph, just to be sure. Nope, answered Garf. I won't run away, promised Ralph. But there's one thing. Before you leave camp, do you suppose you could give Chum a piece of wood to gnaw, so he won't have to gnaw his cage to keep his teeth worn down? Why, sure, whispered Garf. Right after rest time. That need taken care of made Ralph feel better about Chum alone in the craft shop without him. He was about to climb back into the pocket when Garf whispered, Do you do me a favor, will you? Let me see you riding the motorcycle before everybody wakes up. Sure. Ralph was happy to agree to this request. Gently, Garf lifted Ralph and the motorcycle to the floor. Then he handed down the crash helmet, which Ralph set on his head, secured by snapping the rubber band under his chin. Expertly, he grasped the handle grips, threw his leg over the plastic seat, and taking care to keep his tail out of the spokes, inhaled. Ralph took off across the concrete floor while Garf leaned over the edge of his bunk to watch. Ralph bent low over his handlebars and increased his speed. Filled with joy and excitement of speed, he rode in a figure-8 around Garf's cowboy boots, which were lying on the floor. Garf's counselor moved in his sleep, and Ralph shot out of sight under Garf's bunk until the counselor lay still. He rode until he was breathless, and then he coasted to a stop right in front of Garf, where he sat panting with his crash helmet pushed back on his head. "Boy," whispered Garf, "was that ever great?" Ralph silently agreed. "I sure wish I could do that." Garf picked up Ralph and the motorcycle and put them gently in his pocket. After all the excitement of the morning, Ralph was ready for a nap, but first he popped his head out of Garf's pocket. "Thanks, friend," he said. "And by the way, don't roll over on me during rest time." "Don't you worry," whispered Garf. "I'll get you back to the inn in one piece. And your motorcycle, too." Thanks for listening. Say goodbye, Ralph. Say goodbye, chum. And look for some questions to follow up to see how much you remember about the story. Thanks, everybody. Bye.